Right. Hello, everyone. I'm going to share my screen. Oh, can you let me share, Luann?
Oh, yeah, that would help, wouldn't
That'd be nice.
it?
Okay. Share. Show. Oh, sometimes this button gets in the way. There we go. Beginning. Okay, are you seeing the right view, Luann? Okay. All right. Hi, everyone, or just two people, I guess. This may go quick then. Anyway, this is about oh yeah, I guess let me introduce myself. I'm Stacey Klim. I am the foster care program supervisor at OSBI, which is really foster care education. It's not anything to do with becoming licensed or anything like that. It's just education. So this picture of my little family. It's my husband Kevin. In the middle is our daughter Sylvia, who we adopted out of foster care. She is now 22, which is hard to believe, but she's doing awesome. And then that little boy who is not so little anymore, just turned 18, that's Jackson. He's our biological son. And as you can see, he's in a wheelchair. He has some special needs. So these two kiddos in this picture just motivate me every day because about half of our kids in foster care are also special education. So I am able to bring that view of special education into my job, and it's really important to me. So I'm not going to go over all of these. You may have seen OSPI's vision, mission, values, and equity statement, but our main vision is that all students are prepared for post-secondary pathways, careers, and civic engagement. We do have that value of ensuring equity, which is a big piece of my job because we all know that our kids in foster care don't always have equitable access to a lot of things that their non-foster care peers do. So that's an important one for me. We also always like to acknowledge our tribal lands. So I'm coming to you from Olympia tonight. It's where I live and work. And so I just want to make sure that I'm honoring the Squaxin Island tribe, which is also known as the Stay-Chas Band of indigenous people. I'm lucky enough to work at OSPI, and that's what that Castle building is. That is our first capitol in the state of Washington. And that little person standing there is me. And also, those are the same steps that Teddy Roosevelt gave a speech to Washington State when he was president many, many moons ago. So that's how old our building is. It's pretty old. All right, just two of you. I was going to ask who's here. Sometimes I know CASAs come in. Are you both foster parents?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm a foster parent.
All right, excellent. I'm going to read this quote real quick because this is a great book if you don't have it. It's a little out of date because it was written before a lot of the laws, but it's a great quote. In order for a child in foster care to succeed in school, his or her foster parents must be leading the charge and blazing a path as his advocate, fighting for the child's every chance. In truth, it is likely that the foster student will have no other person fighting for them, as the social worker's workload is an overwhelming one, and their teachers may be too busy to reach out with information or may not have the necessary information about the child that they need in order to meet their needs. Therefore, it is up to the foster parent to be proactive in the child's life at school. I think that's really an important statement. It's a very true statement. We know a lot of times these kids don't have someone like that, so it's really important for our foster parents to step up for them. And if you don't have that book, you can get it off of Amazon. Like I said, it's a little outdated, but it's really good. All right, we're going to delve right into this roadmap of how you could support students. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the laws because that really will kind of guide you in how you support these kiddos. Hopefully it won't bore you too much. but we're going to start with the Fostering Connections to Success and Increasing Adoptions Act, which was in 2008. So in 2008, the federal government started recognizing that the foster kids were falling behind in school really a lot. And so they finally said, hey, child welfare, this is your fault. You're supposed to be making sure these kids are going to school. You're supposed to be making sure that when you're moving them, they still have access to the school that they were going to. And if they're being moved from far away, it's your job to make sure you're enrolling them. And so it really put the onus on child welfare. And this law is still on the books. So are you guys DCYF? Yeah, okay. So this is DCYF's job. They don't always do it. They don't always recognize it, but they're supposed to be doing these things. They're supposed to be making sure that those kids are going to school and that they're kind of staying in that area where their school is. So this is really their job. And then in 2015, the federal government realized it's not just about child welfare, because child welfare needs help to do the job. And that's where our schools come in. And so in 2015, which is a little over 10 years now, the ESSA Act came into being, and that's Every Student Succeeds Act. And so now in our state, this is federal law, but our state has taken all of those laws in ESSA and made them Washington state law. So all of these things have to happen in Washington state. And so there's 4 main provisions on this. And these are things that may help you. And one is that every school district is required to designate a foster care liaison. Students must remain in their school of origin unless there is a determination that it is not in their best interest. Students in foster care are entitled to immediate enrollment, even without those documents like immunization records or health records. They still have to be going to school. They can't deny them school. And that schools and OSPI must collaborate with DCYF. So those are the 4 main provisions. We're going to talk a little bit about each one. So in your district, the person who's going to be one of your main contacts is that foster care liaison. Have you guys heard of a foster care liaison? Okay, Rick has, Tessa has not. This is going to be your main point of contact, and I'm going to give you some tips soon about how to work with them. But these are the people that are at the district level. They're responsible for being the main contact for child welfare. They should be working with foster parents. They lead and document best interest determination meetings. They make sure that students are getting enrolled immediately and that records are getting transferred. They have to have records transferred within 3 days. They work on coordinating transportation, and they're supposed to be monitoring their grades, their academics, attendance, and the discipline of the students. So they're kind of that person who knows who the kids are in the district, and they're supposed to be keeping an eye on them. And that person will be your main point of contact. And I'll show you how to find them in a minute. In our state, we took it a little bit so that's federal and state law. In our state, we took it a step further, and this is just state law. So what we did was, in an RCW, in that same RCW as the liaisons, the legislature said every K-12 public school building has to have a building point of contact to serve students in foster care. So every building has someone called a building point of contact. They're not the liaison, they're a building point of contact. And that's so that there's someone monitoring everything at the district level, but then in all these schools, there's someone in that building. Now, this is kind of a new law. A lot of building points of contact are still trying to understand it. You know, they're identified. We keep track of who they are. We try to train them as much as we can, but they're not always as great as we'd hope, because they're just learning their job and they're just trying to understand this. So be patient if you know who they are. Here's how you find all of these people. So over here on the left, this is how you find your foster care liaison. And I have sent this PowerPoint to Luann, and she's going to send it to you, and all the links should work. If they do not, reach out to me. You'll have my contact information. But that's how you find them. You'll just click by district, then you just type in your district name and it'll populate. You type in North Thurston School District and there's Stacey Klim. She's your foster care liaison. In the building point of contact, you can find them too, which is they're good people to talk to and get them to understand that that student is in foster care, who you are, build that relationship. You could pick the school or you could pick the school district in that one, and that'll populate who they are. So that's how you find them. So some tips about working with them is it's a good thing to do at the next school year. First thing, reach out to the foster care liaison and the building point of contact and just introduce yourself. Like, hey, I'm Stacey. I'm so-and-so's foster mom. I just wanted to introduce myself, make sure we have a line of communication. So that we can communicate regularly. If there's a concern, I want to be able to reach out to you. And if there's something going on at school or in the district, I need you to contact me. So that's a good thing for you to do at the beginning of the school year. Usually our foster care liaisons come back a couple of weeks before school starts, but I will say we do have pretty high turnover. So, and then we spend most of our fall training the new people. So they may not be settled into their job right away, but they should be by the first month or two. But it's a good idea to reach out to them. And then if something happens, it's a good thing to reach out to them and give them information. Like, hey, I'm Stacey's foster mom, and she now has to go see her family and have parent visits every Wednesday, and Wednesdays are going to be really hard. Is there a way we can, maybe talk about adjusting homework, or, can you work with the teacher to try to get them to understand that this is going to be a difficult process, that kind of thing. If something's going on, like they're not on top of their grades, they're not going to school, you need to talk to the foster care liaison. It's their job to make sure that the students are engaged and going to school and getting their education. So you want to work with them. And then, yeah, make sure you have their contact information and make sure they have yours. All right, so you may have heard me say school of origin. You guys know what this means? Yeah, a little bit. So school of origin is the school that the students enrolled in at the time of a placement. And that could be when they go into foster care. It could be as they're going from foster home to foster home. The school that they're going to at that time is their school of origin, and they have a right to stay at that school. They should not be unenrolled and re-enrolled into another school. And it does include preschools and feeder schools. So if you have a kiddo who's going from elementary to middle over the summer, or they're going middle to high school and they move over the summer, if they're going to Johnson Middle School and the feeder school is Hoover High School, but then they move, even though they never stepped foot in Hoover High School, that was the feeder school for Johnson Middle School, and they have a right to go to that school. So it does get a little confusing. I made a little graphic. So you could see over on the left, there's the home or their initial placement, and they're going to that school. That's their school of origin. Then they move over to this new placement, and there's a neighborhood school for that school, but that is not their school of origin. They still have a right to go to that school of origin. That's a federal and a state law. The purpose behind that is to create educational stability. The purpose is those kids know that school. They've been going there. They know the teachers. They know the peers. They know the librarian and the PE teacher. There's stability at that school that isn't at the new school, and they need to stay at that school. High school is really important because if you move them, they may lose credits, which means they may not be on track to graduate. So that's why school of origin is really, really important. So here's some tips about the school of origin. So again, they have a right to stay at that school of origin. They shouldn't be unenrolled and re-enrolled without the best interest determination process, which we're going to talk about next. That has to take place, that best interest determination. There is an exception, long distances. So if you have a kid, you live in Olympia and you have a kid coming from Spokane, clearly they're not going to go to their school of origin because they've moved a long way. So at that point, you're going to enroll them in the neighborhood school. But if they move from Olympia to Shelton, which is, 20 minutes from here, they have a right to stay at that school of origin, and the schools are supposed to be transporting them. So you shouldn't be unenrolling them and re-enrolling them if in another school. So if you have a kid come over or come live with you over the summer, do not unenroll them from their old school unless it's far, far, far away. Otherwise, you need to have that best interest. Yeah, so they need to stay attending that school. And if you have a kiddo who all this year has been staying at their school of origin, and now it's summer and you're thinking, well, let's put them in the neighborhood school, they have a right to stay at that school of origin. Because there has not been a placement change, you shouldn't be having a best interest determination. That best interest determination happens when there's a placement change. So keep the kids in their school of origin. So here's what that best interest determination is. So a student goes into foster care or there's a change in placement. When that happens and there's a school zone or school district change, that triggers this best interest determination. So what's supposed to happen is DCYF is supposed to notify the school district liaison, the foster care liaison, with the school notification form. Or a foster care liaison can run a CEDARS foster care report, which is a report of all the students in their district that are in foster care. And then DCYF and school districts will work together to schedule a best interest. While that happens, the student stays at their school of origin. You don't unenroll them. They need to be going to school. Sometimes as a foster parent, you may have to transport because if they move into your home on Monday night, school is not going to be able to transport them to their school of origin on Tuesday morning. It's going to take a few days. So a lot of times foster parents will need to get the kid to the school of origin. Sometimes it's a pain, but it's really, really important because every time research has shown, every time a student moves a school, they lose 4 to 6 months of academic progress. So if the kid is moving 2 to 3 times a school year, they're a year behind. And I don't have data for you guys tonight, but it's bad. These kids are really, really, really behind. They're not going to school as much as their peers. And our foster care students are the highest disciplined students in our state. This is what that school notification form looks like. You can look at it later, but the caseworker for DCYF should be giving this to the foster care liaison because it will have your information on there so that they know how to contact you. But this is what it looks like. Okay, so best interest determination. So when that meeting is scheduled, it's a collaborative meeting. It's not school district A wants this and they're going to get their way, or school district B gets to decide, or foster parent gets to decide, or DCYF gets to decide. It's a collaborative process. And you go to that meeting. And if you're a foster parent, you should go to that meeting. It's a good time to learn about your student. But again, that meeting is focused on the student. It's not about what's in your best interest. It's not about what's in DCYF's best interest. It's not about what a school district's best interest is. It's about the student. It's all about the student. So they need to happen as quickly as possible because, the kids are going back and forth to school of origin and their new placement. You want to make sure that meeting happens. While this whole process happens, the student stays at their school of origin. It's supposed to be fair and unbiased decision-making process. It's prioritizing the well-being of the student, nobody else, the well-being of the student. It has to happen before you change their school. Every effort should be made to gather meaningful input from relevant and appropriate persons. So that would include you, that could include the librarian, a PE teacher, it can include anyone who has information about that child. Maybe it's a special ed teacher, maybe it's whoever it is. Maybe it's their CASA, maybe they have an attorney. Those people should be in that meeting so they can say, here's what's really happening, here's what's happening with the student, and here's what's in their best interest. So if it is determined, and this is important for you foster parents, if it is determined the student is going to stay at their school of origin, then the two districts are responsible for transportation. They're supposed to coordinate who's going to do the transportation and who's going to pay for it. So it should not be falling on you guys. It's between the two districts. They are responsible for it. Sometimes districts will go into these meetings and say, "Oh, yeah, we can't transport. Students going to have to go to that neighborhood school." Who cares? I guess not who cares. I understand their perspective, but what really needs to happen is the two districts need to work together and figure that out, because it's not about the school district, it's about the student. And that's really how this whole legal process is designed, to make sure those students are getting what they need. So that's what the best interest determination looks like. We have a whole toolkit on the best interest determination that says, here's the process, here's what should be considered, here's who should be there. And you guys can check that out. I have it in the resources. All right, that other piece was that students should be immediately enrolled, even without documents normally required. So when you get kids, I know when I was a foster parent, we'd get kids and then we'd have to take them to the doctor and we'd have to track down immunization records. If you get a new kid over the summer and he comes to live with you and you go and he's coming from far away and you take him to the neighborhood school to enroll him, and they say, well, we need the immunization records, you could say, well, he's in foster care and he has a right to immediate enrollment, because they can't deny enrollment because of not having those records. So make sure that you are able to let the school district know that maybe I don't have all these records, but the student's in foster care and they have a right to immediate enrollment. And our secretaries and registrars know this. Most of them have good foster care liaisons who share that information, and they have a process so that they know that when you guys show up that the student needs to be immediately enrolled. But if you have any trouble, reach out to that foster care liaison. Okay. Oh, there's a question. Oh, they will try. They will also say, okay, yeah, Tanya. Yeah, I know they will try, but you're gonna have to fight back. You're gonna have to let them know that's federal law and that's state law. And if you have any trouble, you can reach out to your foster care liaison. And if you have any trouble trying to get a hold of them and getting them, just reach out to me and I'll help you navigate that process. And then this last piece is schools and OSPI must collaborate with child welfare. And we do that. I think we do a pretty good job. It's hard sometimes. We're two different systems. They're child welfare. They're focused on safety. We're education. We're focused on education. We don't always see eye to eye, but I think we do an okay job in our state. So here's some end of year school tasks that you can do. So you're going to the end of the year and you really want to look at where your student is. You want to assess them academically. So you're going to want to look at those report cards and any academic records you may have, like homework papers, so that you can really look and see where the student is at. This may be easy because the teacher may send you a note home and say, Stacey's, two grades behind on reading or whatever it is. But if you don't know, if you get a new kiddo over the summer and you're not sure, this is one way to really track to see where they are at academically. Are they behind? Where are they behind? Are they behind in math or English or reading or whatever? Do they have attendance issues? Was this a difficult year for them to go to school? Why? Do you know why? Try to figure that out. Were there instances of discipline? Were they disciplined? Were they suspended or emergency removed? And was there more than one? Because that's chronic discipline. And if so, why? What's happening? Maybe you have a suspicion that maybe something's not quite right and that they may have some special education concerns. So gather information now so you can work over the summer to set them up for success. So, kind of assess them. And then also a good thing to do is to meet with the teacher before the end of the year because they can help you gather some of those things. And then ask them, where is Stacey at math? What level is she? Is she ahead? Is she behind? Is she on track? Where is she with reading comprehension? Just go through the list of all the subjects, find out where that student is and where they need to improve. The teachers are the experts. They know these kids. They can tell you, oh, Stacy's 1.1 grade behind in reading comprehension. They can help you with that. And then while you have that teacher, maybe ask them, do you think Stacy has any special ed or 504 needs? They may know. They may say, I have a suspicion that Stacy might be dyslexic or something that you just don't know. Just gather that information. Again, what about attendance? How can we improve attendance? Because attendance is tricky. And one thing about attendance you should know is if a student in foster care is missing any school because of their dependency, maybe they have to go to court, maybe they have to go to counseling, maybe they have to go to a visit with a parent. Those absences are excused. They should not be unexcused absences. They're supposed to be automatically excused and not used against the student in our state. And then again, are there discipline events? What's happening? Why is Stacey getting disciplined like once a month? What's triggering that? And how can we work on that over the summer? Maybe they need counseling. Maybe they need some behavior therapy, whatever it could be. But just get all of that information together and really assess where this kid's at and see what you can do over the summer to help get them on track. One thing I did when I was a foster mom, my daughter I still tease her about this. Oh, I don't know if you guys have Costco, but you go to those Costco's and they have those workbooks over the summer, like grade 1 and grade 2, and they're thick and there's just worksheets on every subject. And it didn't matter who was living in my house, I'd go and get those for the grade that those kids were in. And then every summer we would sit down for every day, an hour or two and work to try to catch them up, if we could. And I still, every time those books come out, I take a picture of them and send them to my daughter because she was like, it's summer. I was like, we got to get caught up. So, but that's just, something you could do that's just easy. And you could make it fun, like, hey, you finish 3 worksheets and you get an ice cream cone or something, just anything to get them keep their brains going over the summer, because there is definitely regression in all of our students. And if they're behind, then they're going to regress further behind and start off the year, really behind their peers. So anything you can do to get them going. You might want to check with your district on what support is out there. First, check with the school and then check with the district. Like some districts will have, like summer school. And you could make an argument the student may, hey, this is a student in foster care. They're 2 grade levels behind in math. We've got to get them caught up. We need them in summer school. And then sometimes schools themselves will have like little summer camps, academic summer camps. I don't know where you guys all live, but yeah, you can reach out to them and see if there's anything over the summer. Even if you think that they're doing okay, they're not great, but they're doing okay. It doesn't hurt to get them involved in stuff over the summer. A lot of community organizations will have summer camps. So you might want to check into those. Tutoring over the summer, if you can find someone who will provide tutoring. There is some funding out there from Treehouse, which we'll talk about in a little bit, that could help pay for tutoring. So just really take a look at what's in your community. I mean, these kids need a break. It's summer. They want to have fun, but we also want to make sure that we're setting them up for success going into the next year, because if they're successful, we may not have discipline. If they're successful, we won't have attendance issues. So as long as we can keep them going over the summer, it's a good idea. I saw that Tanya said, ask for their star scores in reading and math. That's great. Great ideas. So that's one of Tanya's tools. Tessa's asking, is transportation offered for summer school? Does the bus route still apply? If they are transporting other students who are not in foster care, then yes, they're supposed to. If they are not, then the district is not required to transport. So it would be on you. The gas is insane. So ask DCYF for some gas money. Make that argument. This is for their education. You have the law, you can cite the law. The Fostering Connections Act says you're supposed to help these kids stay on track. So, those are kind of some arguments you can make. Yes, if the student has an IEP, that's a great point, Tanya. If the student has an IEP, make sure you get transportation written into it. It's not always automatically written into it. But if you can get transportation written into it, if you can make that argument like, the student needs this transportation, they'll do door to door. Our son, you saw our son, he's in a wheelchair. They do door to door. It comes right to our driveway. Um, and it took me a while to get transportation in there for him. So, you can make that argument like, he really, this student really has special needs and we need them to be on the special ed bus and come. So you can make that argument. That's good. So I just mentioned Treehouse a minute ago. The last day to submit requests is about 15 days away. So just-in-time funding is funding that they use for, yes, sorry, I'm looking at chat. Tanya just said social issues could be a reason too. Like if a kid is having trouble, with their SEL skills, that's a good reason to ride a bus too. So you can make that argument. Anyway, Treehouse does have funding for your kiddos. I think it's $1,500 a student. So if you can get on it real quick, and maybe there's some tutoring or an academic camp, and you can do your request to, any kid under DCYF dependency qualifies for Treehouse. So you can get that request in. There's a link up there, make a referral. They'll help pay for those summer camps. They'll help pay for, tutoring. So anything you can find that may cost money, Treehouse will help you if you can get that request in time. They're really great. If you have kids who want to play basketball, but they can't afford the uniform, or they want to play guitar or learn how to play guitar and they can't, Treehouse can help them pay for the guitar and the lessons. So this is just kind of free money for you guys to help your kiddos. So take advantage of it if you can. The other thing to keep in mind for next year is the Ed Advocacy program at Treehouse. This is a really great program, especially for our kids who are really behind and struggling. Kind of think of Ed Advocacy as the emergency room. So something has happened at school. Maybe this is their third discipline incident and the school is just, like they're beyond themselves. They don't know how to deal with it. But they think the student needs to go to a different school or whatever the case is. You can make a referral for Ed Advocacy and they could come in and they'll help support you and they'll help support that student to make sure that the student gets back on track. Or maybe you suspect they have a disability, but the school says, we can't do an evaluation right now, but you really have suspicions. You could reach out to Ed Advocacy. They may be able to help you navigate that special education process. So these guys are really great. We contract with them at the state at OSPI to do their work, and they do a great job. So if there is some kind of educational issue next year, or even going into next year, make a referral. They don't take referrals over the summer, but make a referral so that they can come in and help you. They're really good about supporting parents, foster parents, and caregivers. Because special ed can be scary. It's very confusing. And if you can get a little help, from an ed advocate, that's great. Even dealing with attendance issues or discipline issues, it's a little bit overwhelming. And they work with our schools, so they can help you. So keep them in mind for next year if anything comes up. Transitioning into next year, always remember if you get a new kiddo, make sure to maintain that confidentiality. A lot of our kids don't like people to know that they're in foster care. I know I had a few kids like that, so we just made a deal that they would tell their friends that I was their aunt and I was just picking them up now from school. Or they were hanging out at my house after school or whatever the case was. And in our school district buildings, a lot of schools have their own policy about who needs to know. So you'll just want to make sure that you're maintaining that confidentiality. You want to know who's who. Schools change over the summer. People leave, people come in, people shuffle around. So when school starts again, you're gonna maybe have to figure out who everybody is again. Who's the principal? Who's the vice principal? Who's the teacher? Um, who's the school secretary? Who's the attendance person? You'll have to figure out who all those people are again. Counselors, if you have older kids, they can help with the schedules. Counselors can also help support our students. Principals, please build relationships with them. That really does help the kiddo, especially if there's a discipline problem. Then the principal will know right away, oh, Stacey's having a bad day. I know she's in foster care. Let's try to figure out what's going on. As opposed to, Stacey's just misbehaving again. We're going to have to send her home. Once you get to know them and they understand what's happening with the kid, it's more likely that they'll try to really understand how to support the student. And then again, if you find out who the teacher is, meet with them before school starts. Teachers need to know who these kids are. That is one person I think in our schools need to know who's in foster care. I had a couple instances when I reached out to teachers and they were like, oh, I had no idea so and so was in foster care. That explains a whole lot about what's happening in our classroom. So make sure you reach out to those teachers. And then also, this is a good time starting at the beginning of the year to set up a regular communication tool, like weekly progress reports. You can even create something because teachers are busy. They're not going to have time to sit down and write lengthy notes. So if there's an issue with a student, like, maybe they're having difficulty with math, you can even just make up a chart, like a little piece of paper with things that they can just circle real quick and stick in the backpack. Like, how'd they do in their math today? They did good. Is there anything they can do, like give them a little line, like they need to do this homework, or is there overdue homework? Whatever. You can make a sheet. I did this for Jackson so that we could understand what was happening every day at school. So you could set up a tool like that at the beginning of the school year with the teacher. Maybe it's a daily, maybe it's a weekly. Yeah, like I just said, create a sheet for them to fill out, if they're willing to do that. A lot of teachers they may have the time to do that. Some may not. Um, yeah, let the school know how things are going on at home. You guys are doing your best. It's not easy to be a foster parent. It's really, 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 really hard. But you may be able to start seeing patterns with kids. Like, I mean, we all know when they come back from a visit with a parent, that's tough. We have behaviors. We have kids shutting down. We have not wanting to do anything. So if you know every Wednesday Stacey's going to go visit her birth family, then you can let the teacher know Thursday's going to be a tough day. Could we maybe not assign 18 pages of homework? Can we be a little bit lenient on Stacey on Thursday because it's going to be a tough day for her? That kind of thing. And then if there is a lot like that, please ask your caseworker to have those visits or appointment in the evening so school isn't supposed to be missed. And yeah, it does make it hard, Tanya, when the teacher has 25 students, but yeah, it doesn't hurt to ask. That's, I mean, you may not be able to do it, but it doesn't hurt to ask. Yeah, school is really important. And if you can say to the social worker, oh, I might give him the heads up. Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is hard. Yeah. If you can ask caseworker to do stuff in the evening, that's great. A lot of times they can't, but if you can, because Those students are supposed to be going to school, not going to court or going to appointments. They should be at school during the day. One thing I read in that book I showed you a little bit earlier was creating a fun little area if you have the capacity. Set it up over the summer. Like, this is your cool homework area. Let them put some of their little knickknacks or whatever. Maybe put like a little snack basket so they could have a snack while they're working on their homework. Like, make it cool, make it fun. You could do like a homework chart, positive. For some kids, positive, behavior supports works. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes they see it as a tool that will just show how bad they are. So you have to kind of navigate that in your own home, figure out if it's worthy. Or you can, if you have the capacity, you go to the library maybe on Saturday and do a little homework. I had I go to the library. I went to the library today. I go to the library a lot. And so whenever we'd had foster care kids, I'd give them a little library bag and we'd go to the library every Saturday and they'd pick out books. And sometimes we'd bring homework and just do a little homework while we were there. Libraries are cool. Kids like libraries. I have to tell you this story. You're probably like, quit talking, Stacey. But I had this one little boy who I took him to the library with his sister. And his sister knew what the library was. She was grabbing books, and he just kind of walked around and didn't touch anything. And finally, I said, "Don't you want to get a book?" And he said, "I don't have any money." And I said, "Oh, well, you don't have to have money. It's a library." And I explained the library to him. Well, from that moment on, it was just chaos because then he wanted to grab, 18 books while we were there, and you can't check that many out. But at one point, he went over to the adult biography section and he picked out a book about Queen Elizabeth that was like this thick. And he went to check it out. We went to check it out, and the librarian was looking at me real funny. And I just kind of shrugged my shoulders and he checked out that book and we got home and I said to him, I said, "Why did you pick this book?" And he said, "Because there's a princess on the cover." Like he just wanted to have the book. And so these kids don't know about libraries sometimes. They've never been to one. So if you have a library, libraries can be cool. Here's some more tips on transitioning. I know you guys do this. Modeling appropriate social skills, using positive language, making sure kids understand personal space. If they're having a moment, count to 10. Okay, let's count to 10 together. Breathing them down, let them express their feelings and, make sure you're expressing your feelings so they have that good modeling, figuring out how to problem solve, maintaining eye contact. You guys are often the best role model these children are going to have, and they may not have these skills and they may seem silly to say, but if you can model them over the summer and get these kids to really kind of narrow these down with their social emotional skills, that will set them up for success. One big thing that these kids don't get a lot of is extracurriculars because foster parents can't always drive them. And they miss out on, sports and music and any school clubs. So if you can, make sure they can do that. That'll give them a little sense of normalcy to be able to do that next year when they start school. If you have trouble, maybe ask DCYF, like, "Hey, I think it's really important for Stacey that she really wants to be in this after school club. How can we make that happen for her? We're working. How can we figure out transportation? Work with them." And then if you have and you can, volunteer at the school. If you have the time and you're not working full time and you have time to do that, because studies show that whenever the parents are involved, the students do better at school. And it just creates kind of a really good positive thing for them. They see that school is important. And then, of course, attend school functions, which I'm sure you guys are doing. All right, we're almost done. We have 8 slides left, and this is one of them. I really love Kermit the Frog. I really do not know why, but I always have to throw a picture of him in there, even though it doesn't really pertain to special education. But there's Kermit. Okay, so special education is a tricky one. Do you guys have kids in special education? No. Okay. So I'll kind of, Tanya, do you have someone in special education in your home? Yes. Okay. So Tanya does. So special education is tricky because it's a very detailed federal law. And there are a lot of laws around special education. There are a lot of processes. Oh, Tanya's also a special education teacher. Thank you, Tanya. I love that. You came in late, so you didn't get to see, but my son has special needs. He's in special ed. So this is a little kind of chart for who is supposed to be that educational decision maker under what's called IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So it's always the parent. So if the parent has not lost their rights to make educational decisions, sometimes there's a court order that takes those rights away. But it's usually the parent. Now, I know when I was a foster parent, sometimes we didn't know where those parents were. We couldn't find them. We couldn't get a hold of them. So it wasn't really a feasible thing for them to be in those meetings. But these parents, you know, no matter what has happened, they have known these kids their life and they know things that you may not know. And so it's always the parent who should be involved in those IEP decisions first. They're always the number one parent. And then if they're not around, then you guys as foster parents can make those day-to-day education decisions, and you can also serve as the parent in special ed. Sometimes foster parents don't want to do that because it's a little scary, but sometimes they do. But you do have that right. DCYF can also make those day-to-day education decisions without having any kind of approval from the parent, but DCYF cannot be the special education decision maker. So if you have a special education kiddo and DCYF says, oh, I'll deal with it, no, they're not supposed to be making decisions. They could go to the meetings, they should go to the meetings, but they can't be the decision maker. So this is my little graphic and my little soapbox speech about special education because I'm a special ed mama, but also because a lot of our kids in foster care are special ed kiddos. Special education isn't a place. It supports, its services, it's things to help those students who have special needs be successful. So special education students have laws around them. They can be foster care students. Foster care students have laws around them. They can be special education students. They both have federal laws that protect them, and they go hand in hand to better support the student. So like that best interest determination process, that is the process that needs to happen for these students. If the school says, hey, the student's not doing great at this school in special ed, we're going to move them over to this school, and we're going to do that next week. For a non-foster care kid, that's how it would go. Our students are foster care students, so that's when you say, hold up, Stacey's in foster care, we can't just move schools. There's laws that say we have to have a best interest determination. So that's kind of where those things sometimes conflict, but they're both there to support the student. So we talked a little bit about this. Who can serve as the parent? Always the biological adoptive parent. It could be the caregiver or the foster parent. It could be someone the student has been living with who's acting in place of the parent. If none of those people want to do it, then the court and or the school district can appoint a surrogate. They both have the ability to do that. It takes a little bit longer to go to court sometimes to get the judge to determine who it's going to be. School districts have a nice fair policy where they are able to do it. It's usually it's not someone who works for the district. It's just another impartial, fair person who has stepped up. Sometimes it's a retired special education teacher who will come in and be that surrogate. And then if they turn 18, then they have a right to have those rights transferred to themselves if they're able to represent themselves. Federal law prohibits that DCYF caseworker from being the special ed decision maker, along with treehouse and any group home staff, because those people are all paid. This is their job. This is where they're getting their income. So there's a conflict there. So they can't be decision makers. And again, it's always the parent before the foster parent because they have those rights under IDEA. So unless those rights have been taken away, it's always the parent first. Oh, Tanya, I have 2 bio kids with special needs as well. I also coach Special Olympics. Awesome, Tanya. FYI, if your child gets in trouble and suspended but has an IEP, There must be a determination meeting to decide if the behavior is because of the disability. Yes. If so, they are right back in school. That's right. It's called a manifestation determination. So if you ever get a kiddo who's in foster care who has an IEP, then they get in trouble, you have to have a meeting to decide was that behavior because of their disability or another reason. Yes, PAVE is good. I have them on my list here in a minute. This is the chart that DCYF uses. Actually created this for them. So when they are trying to figure out who the parent is, there's a link, they click on it, and then they kind of go through this. I just thought you guys should have it in case you ever have any kids in special ed. I'm not going to go through it. You're going to have the slide deck. So special education resources, if you do get a kiddo in special ed, we have a really good special education department. You can reach out to them anytime. There's their email, there's their phone number. They have family and community liaisons who will work with families to try to help them navigate the system because it is a little bit onerous every once in a while. And then there's PAVE. I used to volunteer for PAVE as an IEP advocate. They're great. They'll meet with you. They'll go through the IEP. They'll tell you what's good, what's not good. I don't know if they still do it. I know I did it when I was a volunteer with them, but I would go to IEP meetings with parents. I wouldn't talk, but I would just be there to support them or slip them a little note and say, you should ask this question or whatever. But they're a really good source. And then if you have anything that happens at the school level and you can't quite figure it out and something's not right, you can also reach out to the Office of the Education Ombuds. That's through the governor's office. They're education experts there who are there to answer your questions. And also, if there's a complaint or something, they can help you. And then this is not special ed related. This is the non-regulatory guidance from the Department of Education and the Department of Health and Human Services around our students in foster care. I'm not trying to get religious, but I say this is my Bible. I have this printed. I have it in a special notebook. I have about 18 million sticky notes on it and highlighted. This is everything. If you have questions about foster care education, this is where you need to go. It's broken down in like Q&A format, so it's really good. And it's broken down by topic. It's about 70 pages long. I use about maybe the first 40 pages, which is really the gist of the work that we do. So check it out. And then if you're like, 70 pages, 40 pages, I'm not doing that. I'm busy. You could just download the American Bar Association's summary and highlights. It kind of goes over that. But really, you should bookmark this document. It's really, really good. So here's resources for my division, which is foster care. There again, you can find the foster care liaison, who should be a good point of contact for you. You should reach out to them, build your relationship with them. There's finding the building point of contact. That's the person that's at the school building who should know who students in foster care are. It's the foster care liaison's job to let them know who's in foster care in their building. You can look at some of the laws I talked about today. All the state and federal requirements are on that other page. You can look for information if you have a student in high school and you're thinking about, what's going to happen when they turn 18. Do they want to go to college? There's a lot of good stuff out there for kids in foster care starting next year. If they are in foster care at the age of 13, like even if it's their birthday and they turn 13, and the next day they go back to their parents because they were there on their 13th birthday in foster care, they're going to get free college in this state. So remember that. If you get an older kid, there's stuff out there for them. It's amazing. These kids really, really deserve these resources. So, and then I mentioned the best interest determination toolkit that has all the stuff you should be looking at during that meeting. All the student-centered information is on our resource page. So check that out. And then here's my contact information. It's me. We're a mighty team of two. It's me and Savannah. Savannah's not here tonight because I said I would do this, so she didn't have to do it. But you can reach out to either of us. If you have any questions, I love getting emails from foster parents because I'm happy to help them because I've been a foster parent. I know what that's like. I'm happy to do that anytime. So don't feel like, oh, I don't want to bother Stacey. Please bother me. Please send me an email, even if it's just, hey, I forgot how to find the liaison. I'll take you right there. I don't care. No question is too silly or dumb. That's my job to support you guys too, support our districts so that we can better serve our students in foster care. So I'm going to stop sharing. That's all I got. Wow, I talked a long time. Geez.